Now, Bob, have you been keeping up with? Well, I know you have. I saw you've been tweeting about it. But the Idaho and the new Brian Kohberger stuff.
Yeah, I was, Pops is always on there making sure that I put the right shit up. So I like the first thing I posted this morning, because it was scheduled for the motion to dismiss on the indictment. And I didn't realize, because I follow so many cases, I can't keep up. There's so much action on that on the docket. I didn't realize that got kicked to September 22nd, the motion to dismiss the indictment. So I think all that's going on tomorrow is this interveners pleading that was, the media filed to fight. It was a motion in response to Kohberger's motion to get rid of the cameras.
Yeah.
So and they scheduled that for tomorrow, and he was like, yeah, the media's like, no, fuck that. So, because that's the way it works. When you have the media, they'll all get together, they'll hire an attorney, and they call them interveners. So they can intervene. They're obviously not parties of the case.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd heard that term.
Yeah. Yeah, it happens all the time in criminal cases, where they want to televise it. It happened with the Delphi case too. Like any kind of high-profile case where the media feels like they're being denied access, they'll these these pleadings will come up, and they're called interveners. So it's interesting, man.
One of the other ones that I did want to get your take on, because I don't think we've talked about it. I made a video on it, but and I don't know if we'll even hear anything now, but the Gabriela Vargas stuff, when she was actually on the stand, what was it, the 18th, talking, I believe it was August 18th, and She was talking about the DNA and the IGG
she's
stuff.
The IGG expert, yeah.
So at the end of that hearing, is this kind of what we're seeing right here? This one right here, the motion to temporarily seal Exhibit B of state's notice, is that the FBI stuff? Are we never going to get to see that?
Well, yeah, but what happened with that is that they turned around and they said, because basically the way they left it, because she had not provided, or she provided her CV or her resume late. So they didn't get the CV for that particular witness. So at the hearing, the state was, whining that, well, how do we cross-examine her? We don't know anything about her. So what the judge did is they conducted the hearing, but they reserved the right to recall her in order to cross-examine her at a later date. So I think what happens in the interim, when everybody's up in arms, why the fuck are they sending the feds? And I was too. I'm like, wait, you're sending the feds to
that was confusing.
Interview it was confusing because it's crazy. It's crazy that they did that. So at that point, they must have been interviewing her in regards to instead of sending an attorney, they clearly sent the feds to go interview, right? Which she could have declined. You know what I mean? She could have said, no, you can't come into my house. Why are you here? It's like any law enforcement interaction, unless they have a warrant, you have no obligation to talk to them at all, even though they make you feel like you do, which I'm sure they made her feel like she did.
Right.
That's a cop move. So, but yeah, so it turns out that after the feds talked to her, they decided that they don't want to, because there were two witnesses that they reserved the right to be able to recall to cross, and they're not going to cross either of them. So it sounds like it was much ado about nothing at the end of the day.
Yeah, that was the one thing that I was interested in, because when I read the FBI thing, I was like, what the fuck? How could this get any deeper and weirder, this case, right?
Right.
But then I actually started looking into that lady, man, and she knows her shit. She solved multiple cases, cases that were considered unsolvable.
Yeah.
So she's pretty legit.
She's legit. I mean, she's, and I think I was reading about her that, she was a hobbyist, initially, a lot of, that's kind of one of the things, and I don't want to get on my whole IGG rant, because which is really a fascinating conversation, legally, it's I don't know if you ever are watching kind of my Twitter battles with the prosecutors podcast, on Twitter.
Yeah.
Where we're kind of going back and forth on that, which is an interesting argument, because you're basically getting to see a defense attorney and a prosecutor arguing about this, because prosecutors always want more. They always want law enforcement to be able to have bigger reach, longer reach. They want them to be able to investigate more. defense attorneys are always trying to protect our civil liberties and saying back the fuck up, relax, dude. Like you don't need to be all in our shit like that. So it's like it's that give and take. And with with the IGG stuff, it's such an amazing advancement, that we're going to be able to solve does. We're going to be able to identify does and solve cold cases. And theoretically, that's why I kind of brought up the Minority Report thing. Like it's similar. Like that's to me what we're moving towards with the IGG. Because like, have you ever read the book by Orson Welles or seen a movie like 1984? Do you even know what that is?
I do know what that is. Yeah. I've never read the book, but we actually had to watch that in high school in one of our classes, like English class. But
right. So it's like, but the concept of that is that they would arrest people for what they call thought crimes.
Right.
So like if you thought about doing some illegal shit, they were arresting you, which is like basically what was going on Minority Report. That, because they have the three cogs, these three women all like floating in a pool of liquid that are all connected to like computers that have visions of what's going to happen in the future. So law enforcement uses them in order to stop crimes before they actually happen. So when people are just thinking about it, they're getting placed under arrest without having actually committed the crime, but they've thought about doing it.
Wow.
So
yeah.
IGG is not quite that, but it's like moving towards that.
That's the future of serial killers.
Like,
knock, knock, knock.
That's what I'm saying. But the interesting thing about IGG, like, so say for instance, in Kohberger's case, like you have to have an expectation of privacy in something, okay, in order to make a Fourth Amendment claim. Okay, so say for instance, if I was at your crib and I left a bloody knife that I had just killed somebody with, okay, and like you didn't see me when I came in, and I'm like, hey, I'm gonna put this under fucking Steve's couch right here because fuck him. And then we hang out, we smoke a huge joint, I fucking leave, and I leave the knife. And then, the cops are walking by your door and they, they're like, hey, you know what? We're just going to go fucking search this guy's house. So they go in without a warrant. They have no probable cause to enter. They're searching. They look under the couch. They find this knife. They then run the DNA. And I was very sloppy. I wasn't wearing gloves. And I left my fucking DNA on the goddamn knife. So they run it. And then they use IGG because my 17th cousin, 3 times removed, did Ancestry and then opted in. And so now their profile's in there and we share the same YSTR strand. So they're able to narrow it down, and then they start doing the family tree shit. And they're like, this Motta guy, I don't know, he does a true crime podcast. He seems like a real fucking creep. So let's dig into this guy. This guy's like all about murder. Like this guy talks about murder every day, right? So this guy, he's probably the guy. So they go and they do some digging. They're like, he's got some shady shit. And we have a DNA match on the knife. So they arrest me. And then I say, wait a second. I'm like, that search of my boy Steve's apartment was illegal. You can't just fucking search. So I tell my lawyer, who's Allison, of course, I say, hey, bae, you got to file a motion to suppress for a Fourth Amendment violation. And she's going to look at me. She's going to say, dude, you don't have an expectation of privacy at Steve's house. You have no standing. So that is like, you have to have standing. You have to have, like, we have an expectation of privacy in our own homes. We have a diminished expectation of privacy in our vehicles. Okay, but you have to have that in order to move forward, in order to have what they call standing, to move forward on any kind of Fourth Amendment violation. So what's happening I gave you that hypothetical because it's basically the same argument with IGG because of that shared DNA. Now, the opposite, like I can't help the fact that my entire male line for 1,000 years shares that identical YSTR strand. It's the way it is. We've never had this available to us. There's never been any kind of science or technology that we had this kind of access. So like I keep making the argument that I do have an expectation of privacy in that person's DNA because it's fucking mine. Like where like any like so like and Brett would come back at me with like this thing with like he'd say, okay, but we don't really have an expectation of privacy in our text messages. Like that was the first. There's this case, a Supreme Court case called Carpenter, and where they kind of delineated like, look, once we blast a text out and it has to go, it's routed through our carrier, whoever our carrier is. So it's like I text Dan, I'm like, I'm gonna fucking murder Steve tomorrow because he's a fucking giant piece of shit. And Dan's like, oh, dude, do it. I'll have the whole show to myself. It'll be awesome. So then you miraculously end up dead. And, again, they're like who's on their streams all the time? Like, let's go back and see who's on their stream. Like, there's that Motta guy again. He seems like a murdery motherfucker. So let's look into him. They get a fucking probable cause affidavit to search my phone. And they also subpoena the phone company. Okay, so the argument was for many years, look, I have an expectation of privacy in my text. I'm sending a text from one person to somebody else. It's a private communication. I had no intent for the world to be able to read that. It's an illegal search. It's too broad. You can't do it. And the Supreme Court had said, okay, well, here's the problem. Once you hit send on your text, you then sent that text message to a third party, and you voluntarily destroyed your own expectation of privacy in that because you knew that it's not magic. It has to get routed through your carrier or their signal because obviously they're keeping everything in a database.
Yeah,
I mean their servers.
No, that makes sense.
Like if I subpoena phone, yeah. So basically with that, but it's different because of the voluntariness of me hitting send. Like that argument can hold water because I did once I hit send and sent it off and I knew that it was going to a third party. I voided my expectation of privacy in that text message because I knew a third party was going to have it. Now, when you're talking about DNA, it's not voluntary. I can't help the fact that my cousin, 17 generations before me, has my same DNA. There's no voluntariness to it. It's going to get litigated because it's a fact. Like my whole thing is I want to use the technology, but they need to get a warrant. It can't just be a fish. Like if we allow it to become a fishing expedition where they could just say, okay, we got some DNA from a crime scene. We're just going to throw it in there. And it's like, I mean, like you have to balance, like, do we want to stop however many murders take place in the country at the expense of 300 plus million people's civil liberties?
Yeah, dude.
I mean, I do want to stop murderers. I really do. But we can still do it. Just have probable cause. It means build a case before you run in there just on throwing shit in a database. And it's like with the touch DNA shit, we know with Kohberger, how slippery that's going to be.
Yeah.
There's no it's inviting a nightmare.
And
it's going to be abused by law enforcement. It's a whole thing, man. It's like we'll do a whole stream on that. Dude, I'm going to make you read a bunch of articles, and then I'm going to quiz you before we come on.
Dude, let's do that. And dude, this is the most interesting part to the Kohberger thing I think that's even happening. The Vargas stuff, when she was up there actually talking about the possibility of law enforcement actually being on these websites and doing it nefariously, right? Maybe acting like a consumer and not law enforcement to get this. That makes sense. And that's where the argument's going to come from the defense, dude. Now that makes a lot of sense. Like, and I can see why they're pissed.
So yeah, dude, it's scary because the databases are only going to grow. Like that's the one thing that people are not taking into consideration. The more of us that decide to do ancestry and like, there's a huge part of me that wants to do that. I'd love to know my genetic background. I'd love to know where all my people are. I mean, I'm going to tell you a fucking story about a friend of mine that I've known really, really well their whole lives, and he told me like last summer, he's like, dude, so I have to tell you, man, he's like, I want you to sit down because this is going to blow your fucking mind. And I'm like, okay. And so he's like, are you sitting? Because it was a phone call. I'm like, yeah. He's like, so his wife's family had sent them for like Christmas ancestry kits. So, they send you the vial and like the test tube and shit where you put your buccal sample in there and you fucking send it off. So he did it, and he gets it. Now this guy spent his entire life believing that his father was his biological father, and his mother was his biological mother, his whole life. And I thought those were his biological parents like the whole time. So like as soon as he starts the story, I'm like, are you fucking like adopted? He's like, no, it's even weirder. So he's like, so I get the results back and I'm looking through the results because they send you like every connection that you have, like all over the world, like people, all like anybody who's done it, who's in the database, they're going to say, okay, you have a familial connection. There's a DNA connection to this person that lives in Norway, you know, or wherever they're living. So it turns out that his father is not his biological father, and that his mother never told the father that he couldn't get her pregnant. So she had gone to a fertility clinic in like upstate Washington. So my buddy then finds out that he's got like 18 half brothers and sisters around the world from this same donor. It's that's
crazy.
Wow. I told him, I'm like, dude, I have to do so then like they're all, because like people that do Ancestry and me or 23andMe, you know, like they all kind of like they interact, they have like Facebook groups and like it. So he like starts reaching out to all of his siblings, and this guy's like fucking 40.
Yeah,
it's like his whole life changed like dramatically.
That's insane, like, dude.
In the blink of it, dude, it was fucking crazy.
So is that gonna fuck up? I don't know if you know. Is that gonna fuck up his relationship with who he thought it was his dad?
Well, his dad died.
Oh fuck!
Like last year of a heart attack.
Damn.
Like, or an aneurysm. So it was like. And I'm like, did you confront your mother with it? Like, because like the questions I was like, because what I wanted to know is like, did dad know? Because at first I'm like, oh, she had a fucking baby with the postman or the milkman, whatever, you know, old school shit.
Yeah.
For in vitro. Yeah. And he's like, no, man, it was like she went to a clinic in Washington State, and like this guy had like, you know, because that's how clinics work like that. They'll use a semen sample, you know, because there's a lot of little dudes swimming in there, and they'll use it with numerous people, you know, like, and so dude, it was the craziest thing I ever heard.
That is crazy, dude. And yeah, like you said, his life completely flipped, and which I mean, I guess he wants to know the truth, right?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and then I'm like, oh, dude, yeah, it blew my mind, man. It really, really did. I was like, holy shit, man, that is fucking
Have you ever?
I really do want to do like a docket on it. But like my whole point of bringing that story up is as the databases grow, because right now they're making the argument, look, man, they have to work really hard with IGG, and this isn't back when my grandma was making my family tree and the amount of digging that she had to do pre-internet to put together generations of my shit. That was digging.
That's some work.
Like they could put together these family trees in a matter of minutes these days. Like that's fact. So they're overselling how hard the IGG portion of it is. Yes, there is still some jigsaw puzzling to do, and you got to do some research, but like in terms of like comparing it to what it used to be, it's night and day. What's up, Drunk Turkey?
Oh, what's up, guys? Yeah, dude. And the one part, hey, hold on. Dude. Now, have you ever done a 23andMe? Have you ever done the Val stuff? You ever seen anything in? Are you in the databases?
No, man. No.
Yeah. Really. I don't think I want to.
Fuck them, dude. No way. Are you kidding?
They're gonna come knocking.
It was like you, like one of our viewers, like messaged in there a chat. He's like, yeah, dude, I got that. Like he had just watched that episode that you were talking about. Like in his tube came, like, because he's like, well, now I know why my ancestry, because he had just watched that episode. He's like, yeah, I'm not doing that now. So that was a great advertisement not to send her shit in.
Yeah, that was, I'm glad I could help everyone out with that. That's also the episode that ruined it for me, quite honestly. And dude, and being so deep, and being so deep into true crime, dude, and seeing like all the shit that's going on. Like you said, though, like, do we want to stop the murderers? Because it does do a lot of good. Good that you don't want to tread on these rights, baby.
You can still use it. Just get a fucking warrant first.
Yes.
All a
have
warrant
probable
means
cause.
is you've developed the case. Have some probable cause.